Gentlemen, thank you so much for the great stories, the kind words. So we're going to move to an opportunity to continue to share some stories. As we started off, I told you that we did have a timeline to meet, so I asked that as you come forward, and please, one at a time, you're welcome to come to the mic, share a story, but we ask that you keep it to about a minute so that we have time for several stories, and then and we can still meet our timeline for the flyout. So I invite you to come if anyone would like at this time. Please, sir. You're next, sir.
How you doing? My name is John Rhodes. We met Jim about 10 years ago. Although many of us were Marines, we were not his Marine Corps buddies. Although many of us had a few encounters with the authorities, we weren't his police buddies. We're not really members of his direct family, but we were his drinking buddies. And there's probably 15 or 20 of us here who knew Jim in that context, usually accompanied by a sidekick, Tom. And two quick things about Jim. Jim was, number one, a warrior. We know that. And warriors know that warriors very seldom ever talk about their exploits. And Jim never did. Second thing was that Jim was, and I'm sure the police officers know this as sheriff's friends, a pretty keen individual about sizing up someone and sizing up if they're a bag of gas or if they're straight and level. And we were at our particular establishment, let's say 8-10 years ago, and there was an individual who was at the bar drinking hard liquor. We were all beer drinkers at the time. And he kept talking about his experience in the Marine Corps and how he was a brigadier general, and he was a Navy Cross winner from Vietnam and all that. And Jim just kind of started sniffing around and said, he always called me boss for some reason. Said, "Hey boss, that just doesn't sound right. I just don't think it's right. You know, we don't talk about our exploits and how great we were." And you know, Jim, you know that's true. And so I had a few connections, so I told him, I said, find out his name, his full name, the spelling, and I'll check it out. And I did. Found out the guy was a reserve lieutenant colonel, was filling a reserve colonel's billet temporarily, had not won a Navy Cross, and so I related to Jim, and Jim had a few comments with him, and the individual never came back. That's how I will remember Jim, as a man of principle, a true warrior, one who you could share a mug with, laugh with, but still come back knowing the measure of the man, one that you were proud to call a friend.
Once again, I'm a proud member of that drinking establishment, Blackie's by the Sea. We're brethren from all branches of service get together and we share a lot of beer, a lot of stories. And there's a saying that says that he who shares or spills blood in battle today be my brother forever. Well, I never had the opportunity to be in battle with Jim. We didn't spill any blood, but we sure spilled a lot of beer. And it's been my honor and privilege to know that gentleman, very unique individual. A man will tell you like it is. Well, I like to rub it in too, so I told him, you know, Jim, you're a Marine, and that's the Department of the Navy. Because he'd tell like it is, and he'd say, yeah, Pete, that's the men's department. Then one day, further rubbed it in, his drinking buddy, Pat Wallace, another Marine, they found out a deep secret I had. they squealed on me at the 1st Marine Division mess night, of which General Rose was the presiding officer. They found out that I was a cross-dresser because I was a Navy frogman with a Marine Corps belt buckle. And so they gave me a $20 fine. So today I'm returning the favor to Jim. I painted that painting last night. I think I brought a little bit of his grin to the forefront there, and that's what I envision him in battle as a real warrior. God bless you, Jim.
I had the pleasure of meeting Jim about 30-some years ago. We were in class together, and we linked up right away. We both found were Vietnam vets. The only problem Jim happened to me was Army. And I tried to compare him and say, okay, fine, Jim, I'm Army, you know. But we talked about it for a while, and ever since then, 30 years, on and off, we contacted each other, attended classes together. We both retired, and I get a phone call from Commander Tom Spencer. He says, we're going to start out recruiting military guys nationwide. You volunteer? I said, of course. He said, one problem. What's that? You're working with Jim Kaler. After a few choice words, I said, no problem. Jim and I toured military bases across the nation. Camp Drum, New York, Lejeune, and you Marines, by the way, don't go to Lejeune. But we toured there, Army bases, Navy bases, Air Force bases. Everywhere we went, Jim and I managed to link up and find volunteers to join our department. One thing to remember about Jim is that he likes to take people around and show them off. Well, in North Carolina, Jim decided I'm going to meet his family. So I met some of his family members. But Jim said, remember the directions because I won't. So I meet his family members, and Jim decided to partake of their refreshments. Needless to say, I had a little bit also. We found a way back. The next morning I get up bright and early, and I ring the door to Jim, and I said, knock on his door, he said, who you want? I said, Jim, we gotta go back. I said, why? I left something back there. And he said, what's that? My dignity. So he got the message real fast. But we toured bases, and Jim had a problem in a way that nobody deterred him. We got in the military base, and what did we do? We went to the commanding general and command sergeant major right away. And from then on, everything was just fine. So that's the kind of Jim was. He went forward all the time. He never stopped, never looked back, and he was one of the best friends I ever had. Thank you very much.
I don't think I'm quite the veteran that some of you folks are. I've known Jim for about 10 years or so. He's in a very special group. We meet every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Dr. Iglesias, sitting in the center back here, is our head of the group. We have a lot of other characters like Mike Black and his wing person over there, Gene Hyro. I can't pronounce his last name, so I call him High Roller. And there's old Pat Solis and his bride, and Mac McIntyre. Just a bunch of great people. It's about 2/3 Army, 1/3 Marine, so we still have them outnumbered, us Marines. But that story about Jim calling that guy sweetheart kind of jolted me. My wife's birthday was coming up, and of course, men buy lingerie for themselves, not for their wives. And Jim said after one of our meetings, he'd go to Victoria's Secret with me. I wouldn't have gone without him. And so he thought he'd play it to the hilt, so he grabbed my arm and walked me in, you know, and there's a couple other guys over there looking. I was like, Jim let go of my arm, and he goes, bitch. Sorry. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps, and I wish I'd had Jim under my command, because that's the only way I'd have any say over him. My wife owned the Aviation Arms Gallery down at Laguna Beach for 10 years. Finally went out of business because of World War II guys were dying off, and they closed Del Toro in March, and Marine Corps Station Santa Ana, and we just ran out of business. So we had somebody do some damage to the front of our gallery, and so I called the Laguna Beach police, and I had this gent named Rock Wagner show up. They ring a bell with some people. He was 16 years with Temple Hill, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And he was directly under, he was a probie to Jim Kaler. I had to ask, I said, did you ever run across Jim Kaler? I got like, if you did, you'd never forget him. He says, yeah, he says, I'm here in Laguna because I got tired of being shot at. But I'll tell you what, Dan, I really miss his back alley interrogations technique. I won't say any more than that. Except I promised Patriot Tom that if I didn't keep this politically correct, he was going to use the shaft when they pull me out of the lineup. So I'll say it. Jim Kaler was the kind of guy who wouldn't say shit if his mouth was full of it. Just the kind of guy he was. He never told you about his heroics. But I'll say this about Jim in one sentence. There's two kinds of men. One that runs towards the fire, one that runs away from it. Jim is the former.
I'm Tom, and we've only known Jim for 3 or 4 years. It's an honor to be here, and I just wanted to thank Jim Kaler for introducing us to many great men. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Pipes, on through to Deputy John Finney, and those awesome Vietnam vets in between, many of whom are here. So God bless the Vietnam vets. I thought about saying something today. I thought of the initials WWJD, which, if you're a Christian, you know that stands for What Would Jesus Do? And what we've tried to do for years is to present ourselves as, present him as the warrior that he is. And most people think he's a wimp. Those initials also stand for What Would Jim Do? And we're celebrating political incorrectness. And by God, we are going to carry on that tradition for him. Jesus loves Marines and sheriffs.
I just wanted to say something that I didn't know Jim for a lot of years, but I knew him for a lot of minutes. Few people touched my heart like he did. I was at a Caisson reunion, didn't know Jim from Adam, and I have a very good friend in Sacramento that Jim literally could be his twin brother. So I go back to the reunion, I look through these guys, and I see this guy's name is Steve Walker. So I see Steve Walker standing this group of people. And my wife was with me, and I went over and I said, "Hey, Steve." And I'm standing literally right next to the guy And he turns and I go, Steve, and he's like, my name's Jim. And I looked at him and I went, holy cow, you look just like one of my good friends. So he goes, what's his name? And I said, Steve. He said, well, just call me Steve from now on. So I didn't see him until the next day. And he walks up and he goes, hey, I understand you were on the payback patrol and the ghost patrol. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I got a poster at home that's for the payback patrol. You should have that. Excuse me. And these posters are literally out of production and impossible to come by. He says, so make sure you give me your name and address before you leave and I'll send it to you. And I go, no, you don't need to do that. Don't worry about it. No, you should have this. So I don't see him for a couple more days, and just before we're going to leave, he comes by and goes, hey, you didn't give me your address. So he says, here, write this down. So I wrote it down. Of course, I expected not to hear anything again at that point. A week later, here comes this poster in the mail. I was so touched by that. So the next year, there's another reunion. I'll try to shorten this up. The next year, there's another reunion, and about a week before the reunion, I get a phone call. Hey, you going to the reunion? I said, no, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it this year. Oh, bull. You're going. I said, Jim, I just can't make it this year. And he says, I'll be at your house Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. Be ready to go. And I go, Jim, I can't go this year. He goes, oh, you're going. He says, I'll be there at 8. Be ready. 7:30, I get a knock on the door. And it's Jim. So we drive back to Denver in his truck. After about 18 hours of driving, I go, Jim, you getting hungry? He goes, no, not really. He says, why, you hungry? And I said, well, it's kind of been a while. I said, I could use to eat something. He goes, well, we need to get gas in the next town, so let's wait till then. I go, okay, I can make it till then. Well, the next town comes, we get gas, and he goes, starts heading out of town. It's like the last exit, I'm going, Jim, we going to stop? Oh, well, we're only like 275 miles from Denver. I think we can make it on through, I said, well, it's only been 24 hours. So, point is, we get back there. He was just a great guy. And the trip back was basically identical to the trip out, except for this time we just stopped for fuel and it was gone, But, it just shows his character. But about halfway back, we had a lot of common experiences as far as combat. And he looks at me and he says, we have an understanding that other people don't have. And I said, that's true, Jim. And God, he was a great guy. The time I knew him, I really, really grew to respect the man. But, I'm going to miss him for sure. Anyway, I'm sure, knowing Jim, he wouldn't want you to be sad that he's gone. He'd want you to be happy that he was here. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll make this the last piece.
Actually, I'm a little disappointed. I thought I was his only good friend. I can't believe he had that many other good friends. Bothers me. My name is Tony Arrigo, and Jim and I went to New York in our kilts on St. Paddy's Day. So start with that. So all day long, of course, we're going to the parade, we're going in and out of bars. I come from a neighborhood in Queens, blue collar. We lost 28 guys in Nam. I'm a Vietnam vet myself. So we go to this one bar, and I say to Jimmy, there'll be a cop on one side, probably, and a fireman on the other. And sure enough, he says, he used to call me Argo. Nobody could pronounce it. He says, Argo, you aren't lying. This guy's a cop. This guy's a fireman. Hey, Jim, I told you, right? So we party till the bar's closed. New York, 3:30 in the morning, we leave. We had eaten a pizza, which is appropriate on Paddy's Day. We're outside, it's March, it's freezing, we're in our kilts, not wearing undergarments. Jim's stock answer that day to every girl that asked him, are you wearing drawers? He said, are your hands warm?
Jimmy, we're in a Catholic neighborhood, okay? So I go to hail a cab, and he says, "Hold on, Argo." He puts his fingers down his throat, "Goodbye to the pizza." I said, "Thank you, Jim. I wish you could have saved that for later." We get to the hotel, it's probably 4:30 in the morning. I'm done. I'm dead. I'm older than Jimmy. I get into bed. It's completely black in the room. And I hear like the clinking of a glass with ice. I said, "Jim, what are you doing?" He says, "Argo, I'm drinking in the dark and enjoying it." No questions, no answers, no people, just lovely silence. And that's how we ended Patty's Day.
Thank you to each of you. And I know that there's many, many more stories to be told. And the good news is that following the service today, we're going to have an opportunity for fellowship and to have some chow out back here and continue to share those stories.